morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. The Environment Division wishes to welcome you to this press conference, which is the launch of Antigua and Barbuda's intended nationally determined contribution to climate change and Arbor Month. This morning at the head table, we have myself, Arika Hills, the Environment Education Officer. To my right is Minister Malwin Joseph, who is the Minister responsible for Health and Environment. Right next to him is Deputy Director of the Department of Environment, Mrs. Renita Camacho-Thomas, and the Technical Coordinator, Dr. Helena Jeffrey Brown. This morning, our conference is going to follow a very simple format. We're going to have a statement by the Minister, followed by a statement by Mrs. Renita Camacho-Thomas on the launch of Arbor Month, and then we will ask you to ask your questions about either the INDC or Arbor Month. So at this time, I'd invite the Minister to give his statement.
Well, good morning to everyone, and thank you, Michelle, for the introduction. Let me say at the beginning, I would wish to express my appreciation to the media for showing up on time so that we could have a morning of meeting the expectation of the people of Antigua and Barbuda so far as information is concerned. Let me also take the opportunity to express my commendation to the Environment Department. I know you have become accustomed to the term Environment Division, but it's really known by law a department of the government of Antigua and Barbuda, and to express my confidence in the team of and the staff that is responsible for managing the issues of the environment, a very important part of my portfolio. This statement is on the occasion of the launch of Antigua and Barbuda's intended national determined contribution. This is a term that every Antiguan and Barbudan should grow accustomed to. It will be referred to as INDC. The government of Antigua and Barbuda, in response to global actions taken to combat climate change, has joined the voices of billions of people around the world. This is one that states loudly our intended national determined contribution, INDC, to mitigating and adapting to climate change. Despite our small size and our negligible impact on global carbon emissions, Antigua and Barbuda is proud to state that we have also identified what actions we will take as a nation with the support of the international donor community. INDCs are primary means for governments to communicate internationally the steps they intend to take to address climate change in their own countries. These steps apply to both mitigating, which is reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and adaptation, which is basically coping with the impacts of climate change. However, it is generally expected that developed countries will outline economy-wide emissions reductions targets, while small island development states such as ours and other vulnerable countries may communicate strategies, plans, and actions for adaptation and mitigation targets, and what support they will need to facilitate the implementation of these. Antigua and Barbuda is among 158 countries who have submitted INDCs. Let me repeat. Antigua and Barbuda is among 158 countries that have submitted INDCs. The goal of Antigua and Barbuda's INDC is to demonstrate how this government intends to align our national policies in response to the call for global action on the urgent threat from climate change. Our INDC outlines the conditional targets that Antigua and Barbuda hopes to achieve with the provision that adequate resources are provided from donor sources. This INDC highlights government's commitment to take action toward building a low-carbon, climate-resilient future for our people and our country. The government of Antigua and Barbuda is committed to setting climate change policies that align our national priorities, circumstances, and capabilities. Antigua and Barbuda's INDC builds on a strong science-based foundation as directed by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, supported by local knowledge and observations that reflect our socio-cultural, economic, and environmental realities. Our adaptation targets are as follows. And let me say, here is where the country must be keenly focused. These are our adaptation targets. 1. By 2025, we aim to increase seawater desalination capacity by about 50% above 2015 levels. During drought, desalination can account for up to 90% of fresh water supply. By increasing desalination, we can counteract freshwater capacity. Let me just elaborate here a bit. As we sit here today, the reality is that 90% of the water supply in Antigua and Barbuda is provided by desalination. 90%. As a matter of fact, there are days when it's 100%. What we aim to do or achieve in this first step is by 2025, 10 years from now, the supply of water in Antigua and Barbuda will represent 50% of desalination. And we intend to increase, as a matter of fact, an additional 50% desalination capacity in Antigua and Barbuda. And we intend to do that using renewable energy. By 2030, we aim to make sure all buildings are improved and prepared for extreme climate events, including drought, flooding, and hurricanes. Between 1995 and 2010, 6 hurricanes resulted in economic losses totaling approximately US $355 million. By improving our preparedness and avoiding vulnerable areas, we can reduce our risks to such losses. Number 3, by 2030, our aim is to ensure that 100% of electricity demand in the water sector and other essential services, including health, food storage, and emergency services, will be met through on and off-grid renewable resources. Off-grid renewable energy resources can enhance resilience in the water sector. Number 4, by 2030, we aim to ensure that all waterways are protected to reduce the risk of flooding and health impacts. Impact of floods has become particularly acute, in part due to climate variability affecting the frequency and severity of storms and rainfall extremes. The health sector is exposed to climate impact through vector-borne diseases, the spread of waterborne illnesses, and extreme climate events, and protecting our waterways is a means of addressing these problems. Number 5, by 2030, we hope to have an affordable insurance scheme, hope that it is available for farmers, fishers, and residential and business owners to cope with losses resulting from climate change variability. Our loss and damage mechanism is integral to building resilience to climate change in Antigua and Barbuda, particularly in response to sea level rise, impacting 10% of major tourism resorts, all seaports, and 2% of major road networks in Antigua and Barbuda. And drought, loss of crops, this INDC seeks to protect these services that are the backbone of our economy.